Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 492 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Recovering from a 4th of July weekend. It's a million degrees here.
Yeah.
I think it's a million degrees everywhere, but it's hot.
It was a million degrees here too. Yeah, it was a hot, but it was a good weekend. It's nice to have a little holiday weekend once in a while, do some barbecuing or whatever. But we got another co-host in Krim. Good morning, Krim. How are you today? Your room is looking shockingly different.
Well, as you know, I was cleaning, and on top of that, I am like, okay, this is not my place. That's the only reason why it's this clean.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm currently traveling, so yeah, this is my friend's place is clean.
It's an adult house where it's not covered in anime and toys. It looks like a proper adult house. I like it.
I know my man with the magic bean bag and Liliana's statue.
Yeah, none of us can say
I'm just
anything.
saying,
Yeah.
you have a proper adult house now.
So anyway, today we're going to be bouncing around. We have a bunch of topics, some decklist news from Magic Online, following up on that from a couple of weeks ago, some banning news or not banning news, Modern Horizons in Modern, a Bloomburrow spoiler, one ring in Modern, maybe some Duskmourn if we get to it. So we're going to be hopping all over the place today. Before we get into it, though, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit. And Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. You can use their curate service to send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more. It pays just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use the sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. And either way, you're going to get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once your order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk some Magic, and let's start off with the easiest news. We got an early Bloomburrow spoiler. So tomorrow actually is the full start of Bloomburrow spoiler season. I believe at noon Eastern time, there's going to be a WotC stream, the kickoff stream. We'll have a ton of cards. That's going to be going on for the next 2 weeks. Of course, we'll be covering it all daily spoiler style on the YouTube channel. But I want to talk about our one early spoiler because I think this card's kind of interesting. Richard, Hugs Grizzly Guardian. What is this card and what does it do?
All right. Hugs a Grizzly Guardian from Bloomburrow. X, red, red, green, green. So 4 and X, 5/5. It's a picture of a badger crushing a skeleton. Badger Warrior, trample. When Hugs enters, exile the top X cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. It's a 5/5.
I swear this is the most Simic commander I've ever seen in Gruul. Is this
It's
not
Gruul.
just like it's like so
You
Simic?
have your
It's
next
like
turn.
land
You have your
drops,
next
draw a
turn.
bunch
You have
of
the
cards,
impulse.
a big
It's
body.
impulse. It's got the
I mean,
impulse
so Grim,
draw.
how good is this card? Discounting commander, like how good is this card in 60 card formats? Like 4 mana 5/5. You get some like, should I say Hydroid Crosses action, almost like impulse draw style, but still, if you cast this for a ton of mana, you're going to generate a ton of card advantage with the impulse draw, and you get to make extra land drops. Is this a like competitive ramp card, Gruul card in standard? Like, can this see standard play?
I mean, as of right now, like, I don't see as much that would, like, spawn a Gruul archetype, right? We saw some Gruul aggro decks that existed, but actually, Teamer Lands might want this as the bomb. So Teamer Lands is the only one. I was like, okay, I was thinking about aggro.
Because they play that silly goose, right? And this might be better than Goose Mother, is like you're like 2 of, I need to draw a bunch of cards or whatever, generate some card advantage thing. I could see that. Plus, we're going to rotation. We know like Llanowar Elves is coming. Is this a card that, how much better does this get once we have Llanowar Elves in the format and like some legit ramp? Like, does that change the equation for cards like this at all, you think?
I mean, getting this out on turn 3 would be just like without any X value, depending, like could be okay. Like this card scales nicely, right? Because it could just be an additional like 5/5 trample that lets you ramp, but then also late game allows you to just like get the wild card advantage. So I don't know. We're gonna see what else comes in Foundations. If like Foundations would hit before new standard hits, right? or as
So
new standard
Foundations
hits,
is
right?
actually November. So like a couple 3 or 4 months into New Standard. New Standard starts beginning of August. That comes in November. So we're gonna have like 4 months, I think, without Foundations with New Standard. So it'll
Okay.
timing's a little bit weird, but yeah, it'll be coming fairly soon.
I mean, like
Richard,
as of right now,
what
it
do you,
looks decent. So I think this is going to be a sweet thing. I don't know if Temur Ramp will still exist post rotation, because does it lose anything? What does it lose? All the Capenna lands, right?
that's kind of, I think, the biggest problem is losing the fetch lands. I think the Capenna fetch lands really, really hurts that deck a lot. Like, can you even do the same things if you don't have access to the fetch lands? But I think that's really all you lose. So if you can make the mana work without the Capenna fetch lands, the rest of the deck, World Soul Rage, Nissa's, Aftermath Analyst, all that stuff is going to be sticking around still.
Huh. Okay.
This card probably sucks.
Richard,
guys.
you think it sucks? What about Modern Jund, Richard? Is this the
Oh God.
the new Bloodbraid Elf? Can we
no.
play this
I
in the Bloodbraid
mean,
Elf slot?
This technically doesn't die to Doomblade. So like I imagine, like say this is too Magic Crystal. You rip it for 6 or something, right? They kill this,
Yep.
but you get to make 1 extra land drop on the turn you play this. And then you untap and then you rip the next one for 8. And you just keep chaining them and they can't get rid of it. But like, are you still ramping after you've made it to 4 or 5 mana in standard? And if you're playing a real ramp deck, is this the payoff you want to play? I don't. It seems a little weak. Even on
what
turf,
about
4 mana 5/5. Like that's not that exciting.
The thing I like about it is you can like argue it's kind of a ramp spell and also a ramp payoff. Like in the mid game, you can play this, make an extra land drop, like you said, maybe pay it for 5 mana, maybe 6, even 4 mana if you get enough lands in hand. So it can kind of be a solemn style ramp spell, assuming you have enough lands in hand. And then in the late game, once you have 10 mana or something, then this is going to find probably what you need, especially if you're playing like the Temur Lands deck or something, be able to dig for the payoff, to dig for the Aftermath Analyst or whatever, something like that. So I kind of like the flexibility of it. I think that's maybe the biggest upside. One thing that is kind of awkward is I've learned this from playing like Chthonian Nightmare and some of the energy cards from from Modern Horizons 3, but its ETB trigger might sometimes be a little bit of a drawback because that's going to put a trigger on the stack. So if your opponent does have a Doomblade style effect, they can kill it before you get a window to make the extra land drop. So yeah, that's just like Chthonian Nightmare kind of has the same problem. It puts the trigger on the stack so you can kill it in response. I still think the card has potential though. What about Commander? Is this going to be like a super popular commander, semi-popular commander? It's a boring commander.
I think it's a boring. Yeah, it's definitely a boring commander. Art wise, it's cool, but to be honest with you, the fact that it's a badger or not like a raccoon or something like that or a possum, it's just not as cute to me. So for me personally, I do not want to make a commander deck for this, but I'm sure it'll be seen in the 99. Like, I think why wouldn't you want to play something that allows you to generate, 1,000,000 cards, allow you to play additional lands on your turn? It is a badger. Yeah. People do love badgers. Personally, I'm just more of a raccoon and possum. Yeah. I mean, maybe not like if it's in their house, but like I do think that like raccoons and possums and badgers, they're adorable in their own way.
I've never seen a badger in real life. I don't think they don't like. They don't have them at zoos. Right? They're too. It's like look at a raccoon and is like no one.
They're
wants
too rodenty.
But like I don't know. I haven't seen a badger sitting on the lawn somewhere, so I actually have no idea what a badger looks like for reals.
I just assume it's probably you'll probably find it either somewhere near Seth's place or Australia. Those are always the places where if I don't know where animals are and I've never seen them, I just assume they're there.
I will
is this
say,
Golos? Is this Golos? That's my question
kind of, right?
Like it makes that one land drop. It makes that one land drop to pay for commander tax, and then it almost So if you rip it for a big enough X, this almost certainly pays for itself the next turn, right? Because on the current turn you make the land drop. The next turn you have like 1,000,000 cards in exile. You make the second land drop. You rip it again, right? And you just keep chaining this together, and it gives you like some amount of advantage, depending how big your X is every time you cast it. So is this Gruul Golos in some weird way? Like I feel like it just pays for its tax if you can cast it at a starting high enough point.
It is Gruul Golos in the same way that, like, I don't know, whatever the energy-based Bob is to, like, Bob. I think that this
Hey, I tried that once.
dude, oh
So-
wow, that's real desperate because it doesn't have the activated ability that Golos has.
It doesn't get you the mana cheating that Golos does for the dropping in free stuff.
But it does generate a lot of card advantage potentially. I actually think we talk about this all the time, but mana advantage, card advantage, the biggest things in Commander. This is a Commander that does do both, right? Extra land drops, extra cards. I just don't like how generic it is. Like, what direction do you go with this? Just like a field deck, right? Just like ramp a bunch and draw a bunch of cards and cast big things. It doesn't really push you in
Landfall
any specific
chaos.
direction. Landfall, I guess, or like cast from exile stuff,
I was-
like Gruul Prosper, like try to play those
whoa,
kind of
Gruul
synergies, sort of.
Prosper, garbage. What I was gonna say was, if you remember from Clash when I played that loot deck, this would be because I have that loot deck in paper, MTG Pikachu.
Ooh.
So I would add this to that deck.
Oh yeah, that would probably be very good in Lou. It seems like a good 99 card. I would jam it in a lot of decks in the 99. I think if I'm in the colors, like, it seems fine. But
I'm pretty sure
yeah.
Gruul Prosper is where you go with this. Like, you just ramp, and then you know the thing they play in Ruby Storm, that amulet thing that like pings everyone every time you cast.
Oh
from
yeah,
exile.
unstable
yeah,
amulet.
Unstable amulet. Like you
That
put
card
that
is
stuff
amazing.
in. And this is the worst thing. This is the thing where you can win just off your commander, because your commander both draws cards and ramps. Then your 99 can just literally be all tutors, ramp, card draw, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter at this point because your commander does it all. So I'm with Krim here. It's not going to be popular due to the flavor of this. This is like one swole badger. If it was like a cutesy badger, I think it would go further. Plus, I'm actually curious. Am I the only one that doesn't know what a badger looks like?
I mean, I feel like Badger is like pretty low tier as far as animals for Bloomburrow. Like, there's people who love like bunnies and squirrels, but is
Those are
Badger
the
an
cute
animal that
ones.
people have like,
the
yeah, like,
raccoons, the badgers, the moles, the possums. Like, those are the uncute ones, right? Like, we
Yeah.
have a tier list system set.
Not me just like Googling what a badger really looks like. Right?
What-
Okay, I've
what
got to
does
do
a
it right
badger
now.
really-
I'm sure I've seen a badger.
A badger
Does it look like
kind of.
Wolverine?
I don't.
No, what?
Oh my
Ooh,
god, no! I've
I don't
actually
know.
never seen a badger. They look like reverse raccoons.
Yeah, but also fused with
I
like
don't
an
even-
anteater.
Yeah, where does this
Oh.
come from? Okay, now I need to know. Where do they come from?
Wait, it says they live in California. You're in
What?
the green area.
No,
Yeah.
I've never seen a California badger, dude.
I mean, they're showing
do
me
not live
deserty
in New
looking
York.
landscapes in these pictures on Google, so I could believe it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Like-
Well, go find. That's
I definitely thought this was some kind of weird Australian animal, but it's right here in my backyard.
Again, if
your
I've
homework
never
for next
seen
cast.
it-
Go find a badger. Yeah, go find a badger.
If it's not
The rule
Australia,
of
it's Madagascar. That's all I got. Was it in a Disney movie? I don't know.
Oh, so
Uh.
that's Hugs, the big badger. More spoilers coming tomorrow, but let's move on. So a couple weeks ago, we talked about the utopia that Magic Online was trying to bring by creating an API that would release all the deck lists for Magic Online, all the league data, all the challenge data. But it had been like a month, and people started asking, why are there no deck lists on the Goldfish page? And the answer was Magic Online hadn't been publishing deck lists. So we're waiting and waiting and waiting for these deck lists to start popping up. Well, a couple of days ago, Magic Online posted an update that basically said, sorry for, taking so long. Thanks for your patience. But we've kind of reviewed what we were doing, and we were showing off more card data than we desired. So we're going to go back to what we were doing before, which is showing a selection of 5.0 league lists and top 32 decks from scheduled events. Richard, I think you nailed it. When we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, you were like, I don't think there's any chance Wizards actually lets this happen. It looks like in the end you were right. Is there any other explanation for this other than Wizards was like, hey, Daybreak, like, you can't do this. We're pulling the plug on this. Is there any other reason this would have happened?
I've been reading the depths of Reddit, okay, and there's some like conspiracy theories where people were like, maybe it was not Wizards, but maybe like as you're playing the event, you could like query the API and get data or something, and it was like some kind of privacy leak. So that's why Daybreak had to like shut it all down. But when Daybreak made the announcement, pages should be coming back today. I don't know if they're up yet. But as they come back, they are limiting the 5-0 deck list and top 32 of scheduled events. So that right there kills all theories, right? Like they didn't just bring it back. They brought it back explicitly removing all the quote unquote extra data. I don't know. I mean, I think that's on par. The real question is why could they not do this like 3 weeks ago? Like why do we have this like long period of time where we got no data? And here's my conspiracy theory. Wizards was like, we're gonna punish you. You're gonna keep the data offline so everybody knows something scuffed happened, okay? Because like the number one rule of software development is whatever you do, you should be able to press a button and undo it like instantly, right? like that's just like the most basic of software development. So I don't know why they were unable to go back to the old system while they fixed whatever for Wizards, compliance. So I am not sure, other than the fact that Wizards just made them keep it down as a form of punishment. It's so weird to me that they couldn't undo it with a press of a button, because while deck lists are coming back, it's only for leagues. Preliminaries are not coming back yet. They still need to work on it. Like I don't know what's going on, right? So it's super weird to me, other than the fact that they switched over to their new API and then somehow are unable to switch back. So now they got to fix the new API and the new pages to be in compliance with Wizards. But that seems super sus as a software developer. So I don't know what's going on over there.
Yeah, that part is very weird. And just to clarify, this is less data than we were getting before, right? Weren't we getting all league decks, like all the 5-0 decks, or no? I feel like most recently we were getting all the 5-0 decks, but maybe I'm
we're all over
misremembering
the
that.
place. Yeah, so Wizards, if we go into history, so Wizards used to release like all of them, and at some point they started curating unique 5-0s. So they would choose all the different looking 5-0s. They had some criteria for what a different deck look like. And then when Daybreak took over, initially they did the same thing. And then at some point they released everything. And they even released all of the non-5-0 lists. So if you went 1-4 in a league, your deck lists were somewhere in there that if people want to jig them out. Yeah. And then now they're going back to the unique spread. So I believe at some point Daybreak did just give us all the 5-0s. So you can see like the multiple 5-0s of the same archetype. But we're going back to pure WotC data now, Seth. Look at these diverse archetypes, Seth. As
I'm glad I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have my own tinfoil hat theory on this one, and I'm curious what you guys think of it. Is there any chance that when they announced this, like almost a month ago now, or 3 weeks ago, or whatever it was, that it would have been fine, but then since then we had Pro Tour Nadu, we have some grief stuff in Legacy that we're going to be talking about, and because the metas are so messed up right now, Wizards freaked out and was like, oh my god, like we can't have this get out. People are going to freak out about grief. They're going to freak out about Nadu. They're going to have numbers to back it up. You can't do this. Is there any chance that happened in the current meta, like the state of Legacy or Nadu and Modern, could have been what made this happen and pulled the plug on this?
No, this is Wizards we're talking about. This is Wizards.
Yeah.
What I actually think is probably like Daybreak asked someone from Wizards, hey, we're gonna release all the data, and that person they asked was new to WotC, so they're like, yeah, sounds sure, whatever,
Yeah, sure.
okay. And then like 48 hours later, their boss sees some post like, wait, what? All the data is being released. What?
We can't have this.
And then they're like, oh no, right? And then call up Daybreak, right? So that would be my guess is what happened. Like there was a reversal at Wizards or something, or maybe Daybreak didn't ask at all. But that would seem weird that they didn't ask at all. But yeah, I mean, it's just Wizards' number one ammo for dealing with bannings is, don't worry, we have the data. You guys have like insufficient data. We have the data. We know, right? There's no way they're going to release that information to us. There's just no way. Plus, like, I don't know. There's like arguments to be made about like privacy or something, right? Like watching Seth every every 1-4 league that I go through with Jun, in the wild. That would be devastating
yeah.
to me, Seth. I can't have this.
If people saw my record for against odds decks, so I mean, I tell the record in the video, so I guess it doesn't matter, but it would look pretty bad if you saw some of those decks just listed out one after another. So I can see that, although, like, at the same time, we live in the streaming era. Like, is there an expectation to privacy if you play Magic Online? I guess maybe that's a whole big different topic. Like, is your username somehow, like, private? Because I feel like if you play Magic Online, odds are at some point you're going to run into someone who's streaming or recording a YouTube video, and that's always been fine. So
Do you
I
not
I don't
ask
know
for
if the
consent
privacy.
while recording something? Are you supposed to actually do that?
I no one does that I
No
know
one does,
of,
but I
but
think
maybe you should.
technically, you know when you like call someone and they're like, "This call is being recorded." I'm like, "Thank you."
Yeah,
I just assumed it was, but by law they had to tell you,
they have
right?
to tell you. Yeah,
So I think technically
yeah,
when you record someone and post it publicly, you're supposed to ask their permission. Like no one actually does. But
yeah.
I don't know, like if you play, let's say you play Baldur's Gate 3 or something, would you expect your entire like game history to be posted on the internet somewhere? Like, no, right?
Yeah,
So
no, probably
I can
not.
see if you're just trying to play some games of Magic, it'd be weird to have not just like a random sample because you ran into a streamer, but like literally every game you played and every match and all that data posted. It could be weird.
Could you do it, but just have an opt out of having your username displayed? Like, still post the data, but just have like Magic
Oh yeah,
Arena publishes their list, but it's like whatever platinum dash mythic rank player or something, and it doesn't use any usernames. Like, it seems like there would be a way to do it anonymously if you wanted to, and still
just
post the data.
anonymize the data. No one even cares about this, right? People just care about this so they can aggregate it and sum it up, right? Like
Yeah,
like it's all the
basically.
raw data. They just sum it up, so no one even cares. Whoever was it Reed Duke or Richard that went 1-4? Who you have to guess, right? But, like no one cares. You just sum it up and tell everyone Jund has a 40% win rate. That's all you need to do, right? So they can release this data if they wanted, but they definitely don't want this data out there. So this is not particularly a privacy concern, like at its core, right?
So, speaking of bannings, there's been a big conversation about bannings, not just with Modern, with Nadu and the One Ring, but there was some interesting information about Legacy that came out where right now Grief is like kind of tier 0 in Legacy, the scam package with Reanimate, and it's gotten even better since Modern Horizons 3 release, thanks to Psychic Frog, to the point where some places are canceling like their Legacy 5Ks because the meta is so bad. But there was a question about Legacy that came up with a WotC staff employee that they basically said, and this came up on Reddit, and the title was like, WotC is being bad because they're not banning Grief because of Modern Horizons 3, and they need to sell Modern Horizons 3, which I think is like the absolute wrong takeaway from this, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. So basically, they said, Grief is not a fun play pattern to happen often. It was the most difficult decision with this BNR because there aren't any major tournaments coming up, and there's room for people to experiment with MH3. We can package Eternal formats in August with the BNR. So basically, we're not going to be on Grief right now because Modern Horizons 3 people can try the new things and there's no tournaments. But then they clarified that they have legacy experts on the play design team that helps with this, and their legacy expert recommended that they should just ban Grief, that it just needed to go, but they didn't end up doing that. So Reddit freaked out about this and was like, they're trying to sell MH3 packs by not banning Grief, which I think that's like Wizards is trying to sell packs, but I think that's kind of a stretch to use that argument based on what this said. Like, to me, this sounds like they were saying, there's a bunch of new cards, let's see what happens. Maybe somehow Vexing Bobble or something will actually make it so we don't need to ban it. The part I found more concerning is that you would actually say publicly, we have legacy experts and they recommended that we ban it, but we chose not to listen to them. That was the part that stuck out to me, is like, shouldn't you listen to your experts? If you have these people on your staff, like specifically because they're really good at this format, I would assume that they would have a pretty loud voice when it came to what should be banned in that format. So what do you make of the controversy over Grief not being banned in Legacy?
I mean, I don't play enough Legacy to ever know like anything, but if there is one thing, I feel like Legacy is a pretty powerful format, right? So if your experts are also telling you need to let this go, you need to ban this, I think that's pretty telling of like what should be done, right? Because you have Force of Will, you have all these things, which is kind of wild that in this Legacy format, these cards
Yeah.
are still too busted.
Okay, in general, I don't like Wizards being our stance, but I can see what they're doing here, Seth. And I know how to get you. It's like whenever we do a poll, okay? We do a poll, we get an answer,
Mhm.
and we ignore it because that is not like that is the
Because we have
answer
the
from-
data. We have
yeah,
the
we
data.
have the data and we use it as a single data point in our decision. So how can you see this playing out, right? Does Grief need to be banned in the current Legacy metagame? Expert says yes, right? But Wizards says, but wait, we have an upcoming set, or maybe a set just released that has lots of cards that may do something. So we know Grief needs to be banned currently, but we feel there's upcoming changes that may disrupt that balance or something, right? Or they could be like, yes, Grief needs to be banned, but our BNR window is in August. So we're going to wait until August to make the final call. Like, I can see how they could like take the opinion of the expert and take it very seriously, but not act immediately on it because there's other data points. And then the cynical way is, I see that Grief needs to be banned, but we have Modern Horizons 3 numbers we need to hit. So hold up, right? That would be the cynical way, right? But I can see the argument of like, let's see how the Modern Horizons 3 metagame like shakes it up, or maybe we want to keep it all at the August BNR or something. So it's not necessarily like a circus, right? Like I can see how this could work, but then again, maybe Wizards just like, nah, we don't believe you, bro. You're just here for the title. Like I don't know, right? So
I also feel like it's I mean, I think it's justifiable to see if the new set can make an impact and change something. I don't think it will, because Grief has a pretty long track record of like surviving whatever they print to try to deal with it. So it makes sense from that perspective, I would say. Although if you're to the point where people are like canceling tournaments, that's pretty much a bad sign. The connection I can't make with this is why Grief in specific is helping sell Modern Horizons 3. I know it's like a special guest or something.
Special
I could see
guest.
that argument be much more impactful if it was like 2 years ago after Modern Horizons 2 and Grief was like the chase card and they're actively trying to sell it. But it's hard for me to see how this special guest reprint is like gonna make or break their MH3 sales. So I don't know why people are like jumping to that connection. Like that's the connection I can't really make on this. I think listening to the expert's good, but I do see what you're saying. Like Wizards does have all the data that they won't share with us, like we just talked about.
They have
So
the daybreak data. They know that.
they know. So anyway, speaking of Modern, and I guess kind of bannings, there was this very interesting Reddit post I wanted to mention where someone went and calculated the percentage of Modern decks that are made up of cards from straight to Modern sets. So the Modern Horizon sets, the Lord of the Rings sets, and the numbers are actually kind of shocking, more so than I would have thought. So the numbers from this Reddit post are 6% of the sets legal in Modern are these direct to Modern sets, right? So only 6%, but currently 36% of the cards seen play in Modern are from these sets. And you can look at the chart and see, like when Modern Horizons 1 dropped, it was maybe like between 5 and 10% of the meta bounced between during the years. When Modern Horizons 2 came up, it shot up to 25 to 30% of the meta. And now we're seeing this new bump from Modern Horizons 3 that's up to like 35 and currently like increasing. What do you make of this? Is this number like what you expected? Is this surprising to you at all? Does this just confirm like kind of what we've talked about Modern being a rotating format and like the new cards being so much stronger than the old ones? What do you guys make of this data?
I mean, is this not serving as Modern Horizons was intended? Right? I
mean, I think it was intended to see play. I don't know. 30. So 1/3 of the meta coming from like 5% of sets or 6% of sets is kind of wild to me, just like how much stronger it is than everything else.
I
But
mean,
you are right. You don't make
to
Modern
be.
Horizons to not have them see play.
Right, like, because the thing here is you don't want to spend all this time to just have it so all your cards do nothing, right? You do want to see, like, the Ragavans and, I guess, the Griefs and stuff like that. So by the nature and of what these sets were supposed to be, I think it nailed it in that part, because unfortunately, I think it is absurdly stronger than the rest of the format. So the block format joke is real. That's just a truth. And like yeah, like that's kind of a bummer to me personally, because it's I don't know, I love playing all the old cards. It's the old Modern that I love and miss, but that the those days are gone. Now it's like, all the griefs and things like that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think this is by design, right?
I feel like it's too much though. Like, yes, it's by design, but like, wouldn't this mean, Richard, am I misinterpreting this? Wouldn't it be correct to say that like a direct to modern set's like roughly 6 times as strong or impactful as like a normal set based off this data? Is that, am I misreading that? Like, that seems like way too much of an impact, right? Like, I want Modern Horizons to be stronger than a typical set, but I don't know if I want it to be magnitude stronger.
Seth, this is your fault. Remember? I remember very distinctly. I see the monkey's paw curling here. That Seth. Remember the back in the days, we're like, oh, we need a direct to modern set. Why don't we have a direct to modern set? I'm tired of just getting one fatal push like every year. And there was some merit to that, right? Because you wanted to see new cards in the set. So if they make a dedicated set, like Krim said, it's got to be powerful so they can actually sell something, right? If like only one card out of Modern Horizons 3 made it into Modern, the set would be like unplayable and laughed out of the room. So because it's all, playable or potentially playable, to actually sell and to make a dent to the format, it's going to naturally kind of just warp the format. So that is what the Pandora's box that we opened, and now there's no going back. This data does suggest that MH2 was like way overtuned, because MH1 like bumped it by like 8%, the playability of the Modern Horizon set. MH2 jumped to 25 to 30%. So like literally like 25% more. And then Modern Horizons 3 is like looking at like 5% or something, 8%, more in line with Modern Horizons 1. So Modern Horizons 2 is overtuned, but even at a slow 10% per set, like 4 or 5 sets in, half the format is all Modern Horizons anyway. So
Yeah.
by having Wizards print directly into Modern, this is what happens. And they also directly control Modern, right? Like someone's great idea was we want Monkey and we want Grief and we want, free spells and stuff, right? Like, whereas prior to that, Modern grew organically. And the only takeaway I have from all of this is Commander players be wary. Right, because Modern was an kind of organic format that just kind of curated itself over time, and then Wizards decided that we're gonna sell products directly for Modern, and now look at Modern players. Commander is the same thing, right? Commander was a grassroots format where we used to play our unplayable 8-drop standard cards, and then over time, Wizards decided they wanted to print cards for it. First, it was just Commander products. Now it's like literally every product every 2 weeks, and it's really shaping up to be whatever Wizards wants the format to be, rather than kind of the community organically, reaching some conclusion. So I actually see this as a warning sign, and Commander Horizons 4 whatever is probably going to cause the same outrage at some point, right?
I would
mean,
love
I
to
think the
see the data
difference-
for Commander.
The difference about
Oh,
this,
go ahead, Grim.
like Commander and Modern, though, is that I find the beauty is that I can get down with Wizards making things directly for Commander only because it doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter in that like I can play whatever I want. And like even if I lose, I don't really care if I'm losing, if I'm getting bodied and dumpstered by Commander Horizon 64, right? Like the point is,
but it does matter, Grim. So if we take one of our decks from 4 years ago, they'd be like unplayable today, right? Because you didn't ramp to 8 mana on turn 3. What are you doing, right? Like the game is literally like happening all around you while you just made a land drop. So
I
technically
can't be that
it
mad,
doesn't
though.
matter. Technically, it doesn't matter, but like you're literally not playing the game anymore, right? Like the power has gotten so high that it doesn't look close anymore. So you kind of have to build it with today's staples at a lower power level or something to keep up. But yeah,
But then
like
you can
just
but
imagine
because-
just imagine a 5-year-old Commander deck going against a deck that's like fully decked out at power level 7, whatever that means. Right?
I mean, Richard,
then
like
you
you're
can't-
right, Richard, but I can see what Crim's saying too, though, because like in theory, your play group could just choose not to play with these cards, right? If you wanted to, if your entire play group was like, we're just going to play all of our decks from 5 years ago, it would be fine. But you can't really do that in Modern, right? Because if you go to Modern, you're playing at an F&M or at a tournament, or like you're playing against other people, and you're not going to be able to make this like rule zero argument of like, what if we all just power down our decks and avoid these cards? So I can see how
try.
the casual nature of the format, we could try. I don't think it's going to work, but I can see how the casual nature of the format, like in a play group, could allow you to avoid some of the power creep issues. But I still think you experience that going to like a Magic Con or something for sure. Like if you go to Magic Con and play your deck from 5 years ago, you're going to get spanked because everyone's going to be playing like the good new cards. So I think the truth might be, I'm probably somewhere in between the two of you on this one. Like I can see both sides of this one.
To rule zeroing the power level. Do we want to rule zero the power? Like, yo, nothing from the last 5 years. You know what that is? You know what is that Commander format where you're not allowed to play with Commander, like direct to Commander products?
Pre-DH or something.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you're like, But
also,
yeah, I mean, it's gonna be a sad day when your fully power level 7 deck gets spanked by a precon, like just straight up. like it's not even close. Like, you know, like Warhammer was the first step in the right direction. They're competitive now, but soon enough they'll just be like straight up overpowered compared to your old decks. So look forward to that one.
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing, I actually have a video that went up on the main channel today, kind of with my thoughts about power creep in Modern and all this stuff. But I think it's also worth mentioning that it's worked out really well for Wizards so far, because Modern Horizons 2 was the best-selling set of all time. Then Lord of the Rings was the best-selling set of all time. So at least from that perspective, like, it's working. The power creep is selling lots of Magic cards. And I would say, just to wrap back around to where we started with this, I did like the idea of having straight to Modern sets. And I still, in theory, like the idea, but I can see how maybe I should have seen this coming and known that this would end up. Like, I was imagining like an MH1 style impact or something where like, yeah, the cards are like a little bit better and you get some cool soul herders and it's really fun. I guess I hadn't thought through the possibility of like, what if it just keeps going and we end up in this format that kind of is block constructed? I think that meme is actually just like true now if you look at this data. So I still like the, like, theoretically what you could do with putting cards straight into Modern, but in practice, I don't know if it's worked out the way that I envisioned a few years ago when I was very high on this idea. All right, let's one more Modern topic while we're here. This came up on Twitter, and I'm just curious your thoughts on it. So the One Ring was in 44% of decks at the Pro Tour. We'll get some more recent data from Moto at some point once they start publishing deck lists again. There's a big conversation on Twitter about really two things. So one is, what do you do if you need to ban the One Ring? Do you just ban it? Do you restrict it, which would be flavorful? I think Cedric Phillips posted a tweet that went like kind of viral talking about the arguments for restricting it rather than banning it in this case. The other thing that came up is just being played in too many decks a reason to ban a card? Like, let's say you're someone who thinks the One Ring isn't powerful enough to be banned for some reason. Is just every deck can play it, and 44% or 46% of whatever decks like did play it, is that a justification enough to take action against the card? So I'm curious what you guys think of those two things. Like, should we ban or restrict the One Ring? And do we even need to do anything with the One Ring based on its current prevalence in Modern?
I think that this is one of those things where a lot of people will complain about it just because it's a powerful card. And I actually think just because it is a powerful card, like you had mentioned, and it's played in a lot of decks, I don't think it's exactly on the grounds to ban it, because Modern is the format where you go to see powerful cards, right? Like, you're going to see powerful cards like Modern and back. So people, I don't know. I like playing with powerful cards, and I'm okay with powerful cards, and I'm okay with a lot of decks having them. Just depends on like the play patterns that are being pushed behind it. So like, if it were like, the One Ring just made, I don't know, Domain Zoo good, I don't really care, right? Like, that's fine. Or if the One Ring like makes Control good, obviously I love that. But like, I don't know. It's not bad to have powerful cards, right? Is the takeaway from this? I don't think it is. I think powerful cards can exist depending on the play patterns that are being made here.
But it's a toxic play pattern. Like, I feel this doesn't get enough talk. Like, you're like, One Ring, draw a couple cards, chain another One Ring, draw a couple cards, chain another One Ring, right? And like, oh, I just got protection for like the back half of the game. I feel that's a very toxic play pattern. But which is fine. I don't know. Grief is very toxic. Nadu is very toxic. Like, you know, it's like lantern control level. Like it's something that's just not fun, right? So I feel the chaining of One Ring. So the restricted answer
Not
or
fun
solution
for who?
would kind of fix this chaining, or if they just errated the cards so that, like, if you have a One Ring on the battlefield or something, you don't get protection or something. Like you got the fake One Ring, so it doesn't work or something. Like I don't know, right? But like this chaining of protection is the problem. But being played in too many decks is definitely a reason for banning, especially historically we have that precedent. So Mental Misstep, right? Mental Misstep is a 1-drop in Eternal formats that counters another 1-drop, and you can pay 2 life instead of 1 mana to do it. And then Wizards was like, wow, everyone plays Mental Misstep. Non-blue decks play Mental Misstep because you got to counter your opponent's Mental Misstep, right? And then there's plenty of 1-drop targets in Eternal formats as well. So every deck actually starts off at 46 cards. Or, no, oh my God, One Piece at 56 cards. Right? So they're like, nah, right? So not every modern deck, but 50% of modern decks or whatever start off at 56 cards because you slot 4 One Rings in immediately. And I can see that being an argument, right? Like, even if the card was dirt cheap, I could still see them banning it for that. But it doesn't help that the card is over $100, right? So $400 deck start is your price in modern, right?
So I agree with Richard that just being in too many decks is like a problem in and of itself. That's something I've argued for a long time, but I did a little research on this, and I think the best comparison I could find was actually when Smuggler's Copter got banned out of Standard, and I found the ban announcement for that, and Wizard said, simply put, Smuggler's Copter is too efficient and shows up in too many decks, diminishing the format's diversity. And then later they said a thing about wanting like Planeswalkers to not get killed by it. Of the top archetypes in Standard, very few didn't play 4 copies of Smuggler's Copter, stifling many creative fun options. So I feel like those sentences apply very much to like the One Ring too. Like it just like shows up in too many decks. And I think this is something Wizards knows, because remember when they started shifting artifacts to being colored rather than colorless? We saw that trend start like a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago now. It's probably been a long time, but they started putting more colored artifacts because being colorless, it allows a card to go in every deck. And historically that's caused problem. There's a reason the artifacts are the most banned card type in the history of Magic, because any deck can play them. So I think that's a big part of the One Ring's problem, is like, as a colorless card, it's just so easy for every deck to play it. I would say I don't want to see restrictions be a regular thing in Modern. I think the ban list is better than a restricted list, because I worry that Modern would end up like Vintage, where a lot of decks are just like, here's 10 or 15 restricted cards. You know the problem you're talking about with like the One Ring making decks 56 cards? If you look at Vintage decks, a lot of those decks are like 48 cards or something, because they're playing the 12 restricted cards that every deck should play, the Power 9 and the Time Walks, and then like you start with 48 cards and then ways to tutor up those cards. So I would be worried about that. I do think restricting the One Ring, though, is just a huge flavor win. Like, it makes it play more like the One Ring in the book or the movies, right? Like, the idea that when times get tough and you got the ring, you can just, like, play another one and get rid of the burden and start over. Like, it doesn't fit the flavor of the card at all. Like, that's what makes it so busted. So I feel like I could get behind restricting just the One Ring. I don't want the ban list to become a restricted list, but I think I could get behind it in this case. It would solve the problem, right?
No, because we see you would just play like 8 tutors to get your stupid One Ring. So you might as well just errata the protection clause, I think. No, I guess errata is not as clean as restricting, but you will still start with a 59 card deck, and then like 4 tutors or whatever, 6 tutors, 8 tutors that seem reasonable in your archetype. So I don't know if you get
kind of weird. I don't know if I would play that deck. That seems like a waste of card slots.
I feel like a lot more people would die to their One Rings if you couldn't legend rule it away. I think it would be a lot harder. Like, you would see a lot more of an actual cost, which I think is how the card was like intended to play. But it turns out, like, if you can just legend rule away copies, the risk is not very high, because you get up to like 3 counters, you've drawn what, like 9 extra cards. Odds are you hit another One Ring, you legend rule away, you start it over. So that's kind of like, it would solve that aspect of it. But yeah, maybe it would still have like that negative impact on deck building, where it becomes the like tutor up my restricted card play pattern, which I don't find an especially appealing play pattern, but what do you think, Grim? Any other thoughts on the One Ring?
I don't know. I guess like I haven't gotten tired of seeing people cast the One Ring on me, do all these things. It's powerful, it's busted, but I think the difference is that when I play these older formats, I find it funny that the One Ring, it's so busted, and then turn around and cast like Grief 52 times, and then also like Nadu it up like Richard had mentioned, right? So like in these formats, I think I'm okay with the One Ring only because I expect there to be an absurd power level.
I mean, I guess I can see that argument that it is powerful. I think the One Ring is just like on the too high of power level end of the scale still, even for a format like Modern, especially as a colorless card that's just so easy to put in any deck. But I can see what you're saying. I don't think I agree with it, but I can see what you're saying. I hope they ban it. I want to see Grief banned. I want to see Nadu and the One Ring. Those would be my three.
$400 shaving off of Modern decks. You think Wizards Finance will let this happen? They're like, sell more One Rings.
but
Lord of the Rings Masters. I don't know what that is. It's like a pack of 4 cards, like Bowmasters.
Actually, what will probably happen, and I don't even know how you do this with the One Ring, but like somehow in Final Fantasy they'll just power creep it out of the format, because like, we've kind of seen that pattern already, where it's like Ragavan comes in and like pushes everything out of the format, but then you put Orcish Bowmasters to like power creep out the Ragavan, and then in Modern Horizons 3 you put all these 1/2s that don't die to Bowmasters to push Bowmasters out of the format. So I imagine we'll just see like next year or the year after something that somehow pushes the One Ring out of the format. I don't know. I can't even envision what that card would be, but
will push it out.
It'll the Tonberry be so flavorful. You get it right through the One Ring.
Yeah. Like it would be like, I don't know, a creature that just has haste and it hits you and then you insta die, right?
Damage
like,
can't be prevented. Gets +10 +0 if opponent controls a legendary artifact. Haste. Boom.
Double strike.
Double strike.
So we're
actually, that would be a flavor fail. It has to be player death touch just because of the one stab.
Yeah.
Wow, player death touch would be so.
It deals 1 damage. If they control a legendary artifact, they lose the game.
Control anything.
Ooh, okay. If you control a permanent, you lose the game. So we're getting near the end of the podcast. And last week, we talked a bunch about Duskmourn, because we just gotten a bunch of Duskmourn spoilers. But Krim, you were, I don't know, were you wandering the streets of LA with your keys locked in your car or something? Living the Krim life. You were living the Krim life at the time. So you didn't get to talk about it. And I really wanted to hear what you thought about it, because I know you're into horror movies and stuff like that. So Krim, there's been some angst about this set, TVs on my Magic cards. Oh my god, my immersion. What do you think of the flavor of Duskmourn? Like, where are you at with that?
If people are saying my immersion in the year of like Princess Bride, all of that Miku's running around, then like, where have you been, bud? Have you been under a rock? Because dude, this has been so, like, the Duskmourn set has been phenomenal. Everything I've seen from it, like the packaging being like old school VHS tapes, all the horror movie nods, like I have thoroughly loved it. They literally turned FOMO into a creature, and I thought that was hilarious. like tell me that's not like, this is, I'm sorry, I know that Bloomburrow's on its way out, but like I'm in Duskmourn. I love Redwall. I guess I don't. I have never read a Redwall book in my life, but I can tell you that everything that I've seen from Duskmourn looks really powerful so far. There's that demon that kind of like super like doomsdays the whole table if you're playing it commander. But 1v1 wise, I can't wait to see what comes out. But a lot of the sets, the art, the plane itself being one giant haunted mansion. Like, I love the campy vibes of this set. It's like the horror that I love. It's got major Sam Raimi vibes when you think about like what a horror movie, like, you know, how his horror movies play out. Like, I'm sorry, everything I've just seen from Duskmourn, it just feels like it's a set made with a lot of love. So I'm most importantly, this was the biggest concern I had was, will this set just be Innistrad? And they actually found a way to break it away from Innistrad. And I thoroughly love that.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for it too. I'm more excited after seeing the spoilers for it than I was before. It was already said, I was like, okay, I like horror movies. This will be like, it'll be cool to see how it goes. But after seeing the cards, I got even more excited. And I think the cards look really powerful. And I think I have
Yeah.
a theory. Kind of like with fetch lands, how they tend to show up in sets that Wizards is like a little iffy on, where they're like, it's just going to sell. Let's throw some fetches in there. I feel like this is one of those themes because they knew Bloomburrow was going to be a banger. Like, Watsy's been talking about that for 6 months now. Like, Bloomburrow is going to be huge. But I think they knew this set was going to be a little more controversial, and we've seen that so far. Some people really love it. Some people are like, TV's on my Magic cards. I don't like horror movies. So I think they up the power level in sets like that, because then if you're one of those people who doesn't like the theme or doesn't like the flavor, well, you still might like the cards because they're really strong. What do you think about Fear Missing Out? We didn't talk about Fear Missing Out. I've been going back and forth on how busted this card might be. It's a 2-mana 2/3 enchantment creature. It's a nightmare. It's a red card. When it enters the battlefield, you can discard a card and draw a card. And then if you have Delirium, whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, you get a extra combat phase, essentially. Untap target creature. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. How strong is this? This is just like the cheapest way to get an extra combat phase, right? You only get to untap a creature, which is a bit of a drawback, but still, this is very, very efficient.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked how this is like a very aggro card, right?
Yeah.
This is what makes me excited to see what standard will look like, because by then we'll have foundations, yeah? I think by the time this is supposed to... No, Foundations comes in November.
Actually, the set after this comes out the end of September, then
so
like a month after is
happens.
Foundations, yeah.
But regardless, without Foundations or not, like, this set looks like it's just powerful on its own. You've got like the green, I don't know, enchantment god thing that like looks like it's straight out of a Miyazaki. It looks like No Face. It looks like No Face. It has some cool art. But yeah, everything seems absurdly busted. So I really like what like Duskmourn has shown us so far. And much like you, I at first when I saw Duskmourn, I remember we made a meme about it on the podcast. What is modern horror? Like, what does modern horror mean? Right? Because and that's why I'm not surprised they had to expand on it a little bit. I felt like Duskmourn spoilers were like an emergency. Oh crap, we need to actually show people what modern horror is, because yeah, Bloomburrow, they don't have to sell it. They don't have to pitch that. People are gonna love gerbils and badgers and whatnot fist fighting each other. So like that's cool, but what is modern horror? And now the idea that they explained the plane more, we got like the TV, we got one of the scariest games of all, like nods of all time, and it's definitely not Ghostbusters. It's totally Luigi's Mansion 2 with the vacuum, you know? Like, because everybody's just like,
is there a vacuum somewhere in here?
yo, did you not see it? It's essentially the thing it's totally a Ghostbusters nod, but I like to pretend it's Luigi's Mansion because
wait,
that's
where's
the
the
scariest
Ghostbusters
game
nod?
of all time.
There
was an artwork where it showed them like
The art.
yeah,
Oh,
like
it's just an art.
slurping in a ghost or something, and
Yeah,
that's,
I remember that. Yeah.
this it looked good. It looked, the set, the art, everything has been phenomenal. It's the main thing again for me, and which they nailed and has me hyped, is they broke away from Innistrad. That was the thing here that I was the most worried about. They turned this into a sentient living mansion as a plane. That is badass. On top of that, like, it just makes me think of like Moon Knight in the comics. He just lives in a like living haunted mansion that attacks supervillains. You know, like I'm just like, yeah, dude, yeah, give me that. That's that weird stuff I like.
This is too scary, Krim. After looking at it a week, this is too, I need the Miku version. Give me the Miku alternate arts of this. I'm looking at Doomsday Excruciator. I'm like, nah, too
They
scary.
live. It's a they live.
Fear of missing out. I'm like, geez, I don't want. This is gonna give me nightmares. I can't. I'm like, for respect of my sleep schedule, give me the Miku versions, Wizards.
Richard's been a
Give me
good
the
dad.
Badgers.
He needs the bluey version. He needs this to be bluey. It's or something like that.
It's too scary. It's too scary. It's too scary. I'm actually surprised. I'm actually curious because there is something, right? Like, does everyone like cute cuddly animals? I don't know, but like, they're not as niche as like horror movies, right? Because I can't be the only one that just watches no horror movies because they're terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel them showing up in your cards? I'm actually more offended if you play like some like creepy girl coming out of television, which is the actual like literal showcase format here. Like that is like way scarier to me than looking at some like Doctor Who guy eating a sandwich. I'm like, okay, sure, my immersion, but at least it's not scary, right? Like,
I hadn't really considered that,
it's
but like,
scary.
haven't Magic cards are always been kind of like scary, and I mean maybe not scary. They're like violent, some of them, and it's like explicit, but I guess maybe they're not as scary. I don't know. I guess you can't be the only one that feels like that. I guess maybe me and Krim are biased because we like horror movies, so that
Yeah.
might be, that might be part of it, that we're just like, oh, whatever. Like, it reminds me of this horror movie. But I guess I could see that maybe it's a little over the top for people. It'll be interesting to see if that conversation takes off as we go along. But anyway, we'll learn more about Duskmourn in the future. We got to get through Bloomburrow first. But I think that brings us to the end of our cast for today. No fish mail this week. Richard, hopefully next week we get to some, which we might not because they're spoilers. But in case we do, where should people send in their fish mail?
All right. If you have questions, send them to @MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 492 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So Richard, Krim, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we'll be back next week to talk about Bloomburrow and whatever else goes on in the world of Magic. So until then, have an amazing week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.